Well, thanks, everyone. Welcome along to this is the second series of programs we've run for Learn Local. The first one we looked at beginning strategies for looking at updating employment resources. We also did one on literacy and numeracy resources as well. And we've also got one coming up around monitoring learners and their learning, kind of another form of looking at assessment, I guess, at an informal kind of level. So there's some common elements that go through this particular program, and we'll talk a bit more about that. But we're really welcoming you all, and it's great to see you all here on time, ready to go. And we started yesterday with another group, and it was a really fantastic session. So we were looking forward to kind of seeing what your ideas are. That's kind of how we work, on a bit of an inquisitive questioning model. We'll put up some ideas and concepts, but we'll throw them over to you to see what your ideas are, and we'll use those as kind of criteria that will kind of take us forward. So it's a little bit of that wisdom of the crowd, of which we're kind of in part of that, but it is really kind of about you, and we encourage you at any point to share your experiences about instructional design, your perceptions and perspectives on teaching and learning in the Learn Local sector, and all your wonderful insights you've got about things that have worked with particular cohorts of students that you've worked with. So ready, Miss Music, for the next slide. And that looks like Shruti. Welcome, Shruti. Welcome aboard. Welcome.
Hello,
good to see you.
everyone.
We just started, so it's all good. So we've got 3 sessions. We're not going to be here next week, but we'll be here the week after. And basically, we want to look at is graphic design technologies to update your learning activities and resources. But we want to also talk a bit about good instructional design from your perspective, and how we can use that instructional design as a way of helping others that we work with to improve their look and feel of the work that they provide students, and also to maybe deepen the opportunities for students to actually show and engage with what it is that you provide. So we'll have a little activity in between each session to help you think about a resource that you've got already and how you might review it and update it according to some criteria that we'll develop together. And we'll get you to provide a bit of feedback to each other once we've given you some of that. And we've got a space here where we want really to have a bit of a community practice where you share your experiences, because we noticed yesterday, and we've noticed this throughout the program, the depth of experience and the kind of self-reflection that seems to be fairly endemic in the people that we've had has created some really interesting discussions and some really insights along the way. So I really encourage you to be part of that, and we'll give you lots of opportunities to do that today. Ready, Miss Music? So what are we talking about with employability and employment skills? We've got a bit of a slash there, because it's kind of, on the one hand, what potentially employers are looking for and where industry is heading, the types of skills and capabilities that they're looking more and more to integrate into their work practices. And on the other hand, it's about the individual and what their skill set is and how they can get themselves to that particular point. Welcome back, Bruce. Good to see you here. So there's a range of different components to this, and this is really throughout the education and training sector, beginning almost like schools now too, and also Learn Local. Certainly it's in vocational education and training, it's a big part of that. And then also higher education. So there's kind of a bit of a tension now, I kind of see, particularly in our sector, between the individual's needs and then dragging them into understanding the skills that the wider society might want them to build to give them the best particular opportunity in life and in work. So it is a long journey, as we all know, but a lot of these things we can bring into our work, and we're really going to be interesting to see how you apply these particular things now. Okay, Miss Music. So I'll hand over to Alice to introduce herself and tell us a bit more about her.
So
I've been in the vet sector, so my life started in the vet sector in the year 2000 when they needed to upskill a whole heap of bookkeepers because the GST came in. But my contact in terms of not just the vet sector, but still teaching in non-accredited kind of areas or pre-accredited areas is as part of what they called it the AWIT program, which is a terrible acronym, I think, AWIT. But it was the Automotive Workers in Transit program. So I said to people before, I'm from far western Victoria, which you might interpret as being Adelaide. So I'm from Adelaide and Northern Adelaide, in fact. And so when Holden was shutting down over the 2 to 3 year period they were shutting down, there was lots of funding in terms of trying to assist people to transition to other job roles, which required them to have a CV. Some of these employees had actually only worked at Holden from, when they left school at 15 and so on. So their digital literacy was quite low. So we ran a number of these digital literacy programs for this pre-accredited work. And then more recently, alongside Michael, we get to work with some of the foundation colleges, with some of the institutions, the vet institutions within Victoria. So I get to work with some really interesting people like you guys and find out what's happening in terms of some of the kind of pre-level 1 areas of education that happens in our area. So Michael, I'll hand it back to you, a bit more about your background.
Yeah, well, I've after an extensive career in hospitality while I was going through university as a busboy and food waiter, I kind of fell into part-time job at a neighbourhood house. It was kind of 8 hours a week, and it was 40 weeks a year, and prospects pretty slim there. And it was mainly a space for women with kids, and we gradually built it up, I guess, over time, and introduced literacy and numeracy classes and other types of what I imagine you would call pre-accredited programs, and today across a range of different things. Then we became a vet provider from an RTO. It was a little bit easier to do that back in those days, and we started to teach information technology units to mainly to women who were kind of looking to return to work, mid-30s. But also that created opportunities for them to become volunteers in a literacy program, and that was a really a long, slow growth, and then suddenly it kind of just escalated out of control, really. Then about 1996, I discovered a couple of people in Melbourne were experimenting, tinkering with internet and education. I got involved with them, and from that we developed a few programs and ran some PD across the sector, creating resources. And eventually I left after about 15 years and set up an RTO with my partner, and we taught vet in schools, and we taught online digital skills and a whole range of different things, multimedia. And then the last 10, 12 years, I pretty much concentrated on writing and building digital resources for the vet sector. But along the way, done a lot of PD sessions, and then was invited back into the sector to do some regional mentoring that occurred under Josie Rose. Some of you might remember Josie. So yeah, I've sort of had a bit of a varied journey across the sectors, a bit of a dog's body in education, but it's been really interesting, and it's fantastic to connect back with the sector where I started from. So I've really been enjoying this program. So I'm also going to take us through now the ins and outs of Zoom.
You're on mute, Alison.
There we go. I always think about, whenever I do that, I always think, I bet you my husband wished he had one of those buttons. He can just see my lips moving and not hear me going on and on and on. So let me start again. So I'm sure you're all Zoom masters, which I don't look like one when I've just muted myself and talk to in the silent mode. But I just want to go through some of the etiquette of what happens when we're in Zoom together. One of them is the mute one. Mute yourself. for which I have thought I had unmuted myself, in the main room. So we've got the main room, we'll do the breakout rooms. So in the main room, mute yourself. In terms of the camera, if you can have your camera on, fantastic. If your bandwidth allows it, or if the environment you're in allows it, it's a much nicer experience. But if you can't, then that's not a problem either. We do understand the bandwidth, and we do understand that there are other things happening in your world that might not allow you to have that background thing. We will use the annotate. So, and that will require you to go above where you can see my bright green shiny thing here, go right above that and find the you are viewing Alison Miller's screen, and find the view options and then annotate. And we'll use that quite a lot through the session. So if at any point you're not sure where any of these bits are, just unmute your mic and let us know. And then down the bottom, the very last thing I'll share with you is the chat. The chat's a really fantastic space. Some people are already using it. And so I've had a question is, will we get a copy of the PowerPoint slides, which is a great question. And the answer is yes. What we'll do is all of the annotate that we do, we'll overlay those on the slide. So you'll get our original deck plus what we've done as a group working together, and we'll upload that into Edmodo. So we'll usually try to do that as soon as possible following the session, so you have access. But as I mentioned before, if there's any slides you really want before that happens, and please save on the annotate tool, whatever it is. So any questions before we get started? Sorry, I just want to add one more thing. When we do go to the breakout rooms, which we will do soon, in terms of audio and video, it would be good if you could just leave your microphone on and leave your video on if you can. Anyway, any questions, please just grab the mic around the Zoom. Anybody struggling? All right, then Mark, I'll hand it back to you. Now you're on mute. Maybe I muted you and not. I think I must have muted you and not muted me.
No, I muted because my dog went crazy, and yeah, I didn't want you to think I was being attacked. So look, any good online program has a couple of aspects to it, I guess. One is a program or platform for us to communicate and do some things together in between our live sessions. We kind of really ummed and ahed what to do here, because it's hard to find kind of good free spaces for this. I went to Google and we looked at Moodle and we thought, oh, it's too complicated. So we thought, we'd heard from our people at the Foundation College when COVID hit that they'd swung over to Seesaw and Edmodo. So we had a look at both and we settled on Edmodo. And so this is our kind of space where we'll put all the resources from our sessions. So when a session is over, we will post up here the PowerPoint, which will have all the screenshots of the brainstorms that we do. We'll post a recording of the session, so you can watch a video, watch it again, and we usually post the chat as well, because there's some really good chat information. So the first thing we would have asked you to do was to introduce yourself, and we've got a couple of things that a couple of people who've done that, which is absolutely fantastic. Get to know who's with us and who's there, and you can continue to do that. So we sent these invites out to you last week, but it's kind of a little bit clunky, like all online platforms, and people have the invitations go to spam and get missing. And so if you can't or haven't been able to get in, just email me and I'll be able to send you your login details. We've got those in there. So also what we've got in here is what we call an agenda. And this is an Intermedia thing. And it's kind of like a calendar that lets you see what's happening. You can see there's two agenda items here. One's called Getting Started. And the agenda item there was introduce yourself. So that's what we've kind of asked people to do up to this point. So if you click on it, it'll tell you kind of what to do. And then there's a link to the actual activity to be able to put your introduction there. But then you've also see, oh, here we go, slides. And all you need to do is just reply to that. But there's another one there. You can see week 1 has popped up. And if you select that, you can see there's a task for you to complete over the next 2 weeks. And I'm not going to talk too much about this in the moment, but this will form part of what you do over time with your resource, and we'll speak of it. And you can submit that there and upload Word document or a PowerPoint or PDF, whatever you've got there, along with kind of your suggestions. But we will talk more about what that means and those design principles a little bit later. Now, the calendar is a little bit dicky if you are in a couple of different programs. So you can see, you can view the full calendar. And so depending on, you can see Alison's got 3 getting started, which is a bit of a worry. So if she selects that little cog up the top, you can siphon out, you might be in 2 programs, so some of you in both the employability. If you select one of those programs, it'll show you the agenda items that are current for the particular period that we're in. So we've let week 1 go for the entire project, so that when you've got all that time to submit your task. But obviously the quicker the better. That kind of works too well. And you can see there's a task coming up in week 2, but you won't see that until that date appears. At any point, if we go back to the main page, Alison, at any point you want to just make a comment, you can see at the top you've got start a discussion, share class materials, whatever. So it's really quite simple. So you might have a brainwave, or you might have an experience you want to share, or something might come to you, or you might even see a resource or a video that you think we might benefit from. Chuck it up there. It makes for interesting reading, and you should also probably start to get some notifications when things are posted there. So look, that's kind of in moto. Good on you for those who've made it. But first task, probably get it up there and introduce yourself and leave your kind of name up there. So while we're kind of on that, of course, if you've got any questions about that, just email me and I'll sort them out for you, or Alison as well. Now, what we're going to do now is give a chance for you to introduce yourself, because we've kind of been through the welcomes, and find out a little bit about you. And we're going to use the chat. So Alison's just been through the chat. You should be able to see the chat icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you zoom down below with your mouse, you should see it. We're going to ask you to put something in chat, and we're going to ask you a bit about yourself. Tell us, where do you work? What's your organization that you work for? What are the pre-accredited courses that you are designing resources for? And what's one amazing thing about you? So I want to get a bit of a sense of who you are and your kind of role in the instructional design game where you work. So we'll give you 2 minutes to do that. You can write as much or as little as you want. And then once you've just press enter, and your message will come out. If you want to pepper it with icons, you can kind of do that too. I'll just be quiet for a couple of minutes and we'll let you post. Hey, Paul, you've won a prize. You've got this magnificent, rare, limited edition hand sanitizer. It's coming your way for the first place. So congratulations there.
That's an honour, Mick. Thank you so much.
I think it's better than second prize, which I'll show you here. And that goes to Chrisanne. So she's won a magnificent lens cleaner. I just have to work out a way to get it down the camera to you, but there we go. So we're starting to get him in now. There they come. That's fantastic. You can stretch the chat out if you want it and see it a bit clearer because all these things coming in because it's a bit tricky moving up and down. So Paul's at Wyndham. So Wyndham, we're talking Werribee, aren't we? I think, Paul.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
And you're in the skills and work for work and study program and piloting and moderating those resources. This is a statewide program, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And which one of the ones have you worked on?
So in first semester last year, I did food processing.
Okay.
So that's the one that I put together, and at Wyndham CEC, we were fortunate enough to do 3 of the 7 courses.
Oh, you're right.
And in the second semester, another couple of teachers did building and construction and early childhood education. And I was kind of like the project manager for those ones, mentoring the guys because I'd been through that experience, the experiences and doing all the proofreading and all the dirty work to save them all the time. And
now you're at the fun point bit where you can actually see how your kind of ideas about what should work do work in the transition. Hey, now I've got to ask you, is it possible for us to have a live demonstration of the humming and whistling at the same time?
Yeah, I was reluctant to write it in case you asked me to do that, but
it is pretty impressive.
In absence of thinking of anything else. So hang on. All right. Performance anxiety 101. All right. See how we go.
I can't give you a virtual but I got to give you a real one, and people are too. That's sensational. Paul, most people sort of put up something amazing, which is kind of in the outside world, but you've had something we could go live with. So you're the first person that's ever had to perform live in any of these sessions that I've run. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I'm a teacher, so natural show off. So there you go, Mick.
Look, I didn't want to say that, but thanks for bringing it up and sharing that.
No worries.
Good on you. I should say Paul and I know each other, so it's all good. Hey, Jen, welcome back from Gippsland. You're in infection control and food safety game. I could probably share a really nice case study about my local pizza place, but we can talk about that outside of the class. And late bloomer, and time for you and all your studies. Yep. So you've kind of come back to study after time, and now you're at Gippsland Community Ed. Yeah.
Sorry, I dropped out and had to come back in.
You were practicing humming and whistling, weren't you?
Yes. So yeah, all my studies are late, but I certainly have a different passion for my studies than when I was at school. And I usually say to late students, look, if I can do it, you can do it if you want to. Yeah. And I can stand there and say, well, I've actually done it. You can too if you wish. Yeah. So it's been really handy for other people to see someone who's, left school at year 11, which is what we did. So yeah.
Good on you, Jen. Thanks for coming.
No, I love what I do. Yeah.
Great. That's a lot. That's the main thing, isn't it? Chrisanne, you're at the CAE in town. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your the program that you're in? Because that sounds.
Yes, I'm at CAE. It was started 10 years ago. The program that I'm at launch. So I've been there right at conception at launch housing. where initially the people who were put into launch housing by Grollo got all launch. The building at 660 Elizabeth Street was sort of done by all his friends for nothing. And so CAE came in and had a program. So we had the top floor. The 11th floor was a garden that I established, and it's been going for 10 years. We've won, last year we won the State Victorian Bloom as the best community space. So that was pretty fantastic because I wasn't there. So that was really good because it really is empowering the residents who have access to that. So I really congratulate them for keeping that going. And so we really grow the vegetables on the 11th floor, and then we do the cooking and shopping when in Vic Market. They've just made a new kitchen. We've never had a kitchen before. We've just had the staff area, and now we've had a kitchen. Of course, because of COVID, I haven't been able. I've used it twice. So it's a great sense of enjoyment, and I learn something every week. And unfortunately now most of the people who are in the building, you know, they leave the building, have now been in like homeless for 10 years, 5 to 10 years. So I've got very vulnerable learners, some who can't read or do computer skills or anything like that. So, but I have worked in Japan and know what it's like not to be able to read and taken classes there. So I can empathise with them.
Okay,
yeah, so
beautiful. Thank you. Good luck with that, and hopefully you get back to it pretty soon. Shruti, you're a woman after my own heart. We've been running cybersecurity courses. I've been doing that this year as well. We probably could swap and steal one another's notes there. Welcome aboard. It's really nice to see you again.
Thank you, Mike, and everyone. Basically, I work at 4 different institutions, and that actually gives me a lot of experience about, like, I'm fortunate enough to collect all the experience about different communities and different students. And basically, I have delivered the Google Labs and basic Microsoft courses. But cybersecurity, actually, I just designed this year. So yeah, it would be like, have you done this, started this year, or you have delivered those courses?
I had to write courses. I wrote 4 vet courses, but yeah, I think it all came down to one thing. Don't click on that link, whatever you do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lottie, welcome to you.
Hello.
So you're at Dumpton. Now, Dumpton,
Yes.
is that near Dandenong? Or
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very close, yeah.
And you're in the employability game and digital literacy and business skills. What are the sort of employability skills you concentrate on at Dumpton?
Well, they sort of come to us that we can get some very vulnerable or disadvantaged learners, or I also work with learners from disability employment services and the school leaver employment supports, and quite often they don't know what they want. They don't know what skills they've already got. Some of them I've worked with, women from Afghanistan, for example, who come to us. They've never worked. So it's a lot of identifying skills, and then once we've identified the skills that they've got, helping them work out what kind of job they want, and then putting together a resume and cover letter for that. So I think the identifying skills bit is probably the most in depth, because they come and go, I don't know what I've done, I've never worked, or or I've done this, but it was, sometimes we get women going back to work after 20 years after having kids, and they worked in something 20 years ago, but they've got no idea what they can do. And it's just, helping them identify those skills that they have from other areas of life, whether it's raising children, whether it's, doing things at school and things like that, trying to help them identify their skills. So yeah, identify the strengths which are transferable to the workplace. Exactly, that's the main focus on that. So,
and it sounds like you hide a lot, because if you're the person who's everybody asks about technical things, I'm sure you're getting tapped on the shoulder all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you know Canva, or do you know virtual reality, or do you know this? So I've had to get up to speed very quickly on some things. We applied for a grant for some virtual reality equipment and to design a pre-accredited program. And before that, I knew a little bit about virtual reality from university like 25 years ago, but it's changed since then. And so it was just getting up to speed on that to the point where I can help people learn it themselves. And it was year-long cave development of that course, and I loved it. And we can't do too much now in COVID with the virtual reality, but the students I've delivered it to absolutely loved it, really engaged with it, because it's something new, it's something different, especially the young school leavers. They really love it. So
fantastic. Thank you. Well, you made me think 25 years ago, I'm sure there was a couple of people on the committee of the neighbourhood house I worked for who are living in virtual reality, but that's probably a different time.
Yes,
thank you.
It was very different.
Gay, welcome back to you. Oh no, so we skip Sylvia. So Sylvia, you and I have in common that we can eat a lot and not put on any weight. So we need to have probably a big feast at some point. So welcome back. I know you're always really busy from what I remember.
Yes, always terribly busy, but thank God the grants and all that has all been put in, so I can breathe a little. So I don't actually do pre-accredited training myself, but I've got a couple of team members that do it. But we often sit down and I'm always the sounding board. And because of my previous experience as a trainer, 20 odd years, I think that's useful at some point. And I eat a lot and not put on weight, not pout on weight, sorry, not put on weight. And I think that's because I don't eat a lot of carbohydrates maybe, but I eat a lot of other things.
Good tip. Good on you. Well, thank you and welcome back to you, Gay, as well. You're in the agriculture game, aren't you? You're working on
Yes.
kind of far west Victoria, aren't you?
Well, I work from Summers, which is south of Dandenong, but I work remotely with Hamilton campus. Our Learn Local is in the Western District. So I've always worked on the computer. So I design and do the pre-accredited courses, but I'm also now working with students one-on-one and in groups to
that nice contrast.
I love the students. They are really, really a challenge, but really, really good too. So it's you get real rewards, don't you, from working with this sort of person?
Yeah, absolutely.
They seem to improve so quickly.
Yes.
So that's my story.
Good on you, Gay, and welcome back. Giving us another chance. Now, Anna's, I've just looked at Anna's profile. I'm starting to think we probably need to extend one of these sessions by 10 minutes so we can just get an opportunity to present some of her material.
Please don't.
So you've got a Brazilian background. Is that what you do?
Yes, I'm from Brazil, and I also have a dash of Armenian background. So I use this in my favor for my classes. I say that I'm the Brazilian Kardashian. So I try to bring something to their reality and make it fun somehow. And as I said, I've never thought that one day I would become a teacher. And Brazil is also famous for the soap operas. And every time there is one on a particular culture. So I know a little bit of each of my students, and I use this to make it fun. And make this closer to their world.
Yes, I'm probably a bit like that too. I like to have a bit of fun. But you made me remember a woman from Brazil that I worked with here in Ballarat who came to Australia, who was a lawyer. And so she came to the neighbourhood house to improve her everyday and transactional English so she could sit at bar exams. So she's with us for about a year, I think. And then I don't know if I assume she would have been successful because she's had great drive, but she was a wonderful woman. So welcome. And we look forward to hearing and experiencing your comedy peppered throughout the session. So you can use all genres. You can use the text chat comedy and video comedy, physical comedy. It's all acceptable. Well, thanks everybody for introducing yourself. It's amazing gang again. Oh, annotate comedy. Now we're talking. That's a totally new field. We'll probably get a grant for that, Alison. All right, I'm going to hand over to Alison because we've got another getting to know you activity with a little bit more depth in it. So thanks everyone.
So yeah, we are in an amazing, among amazing people. So this is what we're aiming to get through today. So I'll just be quiet and let you have a quick scan through what's on the screen there. We'll try to squeeze everything in the time we've got together. But as Michael said, it'd be nice for you to get to know each other a little bit more, perhaps in the context of this webinar. So we're going to put you into a breakout room, but before we start putting you in the breakout, just a couple of the instructions about how to function in the breakout room. So in the chat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the instructions. You know, the nice thing about the chat is it will stick. So whatever I write in the chat now will actually stay when you get into the breakout room. So there's really only one thing you need to remember what I'm saying now, and that is open the chat. So if you forget everything else, just what did she say? Open the chat. So yeah, open the chat, just very informal. It's only going to be small groups. And then do a quick kind of intro. You've done a fairly thorough intro there. But again, when you get in there, you might want to just remind yourself who are the other amazing people in the breakout room with you. I haven't updated it. I should say, excuse me again, let me put that together. I recycle some of my, ignore the L and N thing. Let me try again. Introduce yourself to one another very, very briefly. And then what do you look for when you're choosing employability skills for your learners? So resources, what are you actually looking for? What are some of the key criteria when you're looking for those resources? So before we jump into the breakout rooms, any questions about the breakout room itself or what to do when you get in there? All right, so for about 5 or 6 minutes, it goes by pretty quickly, but does give you a good opportunity to mix and mingle with one another. So you should have an invite. Make sure I don't touch anything I shouldn't. And we'll come and check on you and see how you're going. Yep, so beautiful. Some's going across quite quickly. Jen said she had trouble with internet, so maybe that's part of the issue for Jen. How you going there, Jen? I'll jump in, and do you want to keep an eye on her? Or
Yeah,
okay?
sure.
What would you like?
Yeah, no worries.
I think she said had internet. Yeah, and she said she kept coming in and out, so maybe in the bandwidth issue too.
Yeah, okay. So how long do you want to give them?
So I reckon I think last time, yesterday we did about 5 minutes, and so I'll do in about 4.5 minutes. I'll do the 2-minute warning, and then where's my cheat sheet?
Yeah, okay.
Cool. Let me grab that over here.
Oh,
I'll jump in.
got a message from Ali. Oh, I see if I can invite him.
I can see a couple of the others are still in their rooms, so they will come out soon. The nice thing about that breakout room is it has that magical 60 seconds gone and everybody's back. So we'll just make sure everyone's back as one. And while you're waiting, if you haven't already done so, you'll need to get that annotate tool back out again whenever the screen's no longer sharing. So it's only going to come out when the screen comes out. When the screen sharing comes out. Just check we've got everybody. Yep, everybody's back. So thank you so much for getting in there and sharing a little bit more about what each of you do. I could already hear some of the networking going on around where the opportunities are to share what you do with in your areas. And then a discussion around what are some of the things you need to look for. So thank you for whoever's jumped in on the screen straight away. So remember, you will need to get the annotate tool out. And that's right up the top here, the green above where you see this green bit. So don't try and click on this or here. You have to actually go right up above that. Find the little slither that says you are viewing Alison Miller's screen. And then that's when, and don't worry, if it does jump on another person's, that's fine. I can actually add to it. For some reason, even if you've typed it, you can't change it. Only the person sharing the screen, as my understanding, can actually change anything. So have a little think. What's something you look for when choosing an employment skill, employability skill resource for your learner groups? Be allowed if you can't. If you've got any issues with the annotate, please tell us now, because there's going to be a long haul of annotate. We'd love you to get involved in that. Okay, so we've got, yep, targeted around a particular skill. Beautiful. Some of it about that actual tool. Yep, beautiful. Some more visual stuff happening here. Okay, so interest changes. Yes. I went to the interest area. I'm going to put the colourful there. So I've got maybe about the learner relevant to the interest area. I reckon they might come over here. Buddy these together as they come through. Yes, and if it can be adjusted suitable to the learner audience, I'll come back to that one in a minute. We'll get you a little chat once everybody's had a little shot of it. Bring these in. So Paul, this is where we need to hear you hum. There must be a shortening of the wishum, the wishum in, if that's such a thing. Okay, so there we go. Certainly it's up, needs to be up to date. Okay. So we might get started. So if you're still adding yours, please continue to add yours, but I might just get started and ask the person that's written this one, adjusting quickly. So looking at a resource and then what are we looking for? To describe the process in your mind when you're doing that.
It's Jen here, Alison.
Yep, Jen.
I often find that my cohort, when I first meet them, either have a lot more knowledge or less knowledge than I anticipate. So I look for something that is like a foundation and I can build it. I always have a few more resources tucked away that I can go to. But it can be built on to maintain their interest if I've not pitched it at the right level.
So it needs to be quite flexible by the sounds of it.
Oh, it needs to be very flexible.
And in a format that's easy to adjust. So that's a good thing to think about when, if you're designing your own, which we're not, we're going to actually look at other people's, but yeah, if you can, when you design your own, make it easy for other people to adjust, but certainly when you're creating your own, doing the same. And
I find sometimes that I need to have people at different levels doing the same stuff. So I've got some stuff that might be a bit harder, and some that might be a bit easier, but they're still the same subject. I get a variety of people. Nice. I don't have a lot of cold learners, or they've got a bit of English, and they adjust surprisingly well. But yeah.
So that individualized approach is fantastic. So it's still around the same kind of topic or area, but you've got levels for which, and then, you know, you can actually then build and scaffold their learning, which is fantastic. Beautiful. What about the one with lots, the cool person here? So lots of visuals, especially for cold learners. So what are we looking for? What sort of things do we need to be conscious of when we're looking for? Who is that person here? Lottie.
Well, yeah, that's something that we we talked about. It wasn't me that suggested it, but it is something that I look for, and basically making the learning more concrete and relevant to help them understand what it is. Yeah, so they can visualize the situation, and it helps with their language as well. So if they they're not as confident with English, that it helps, I think, make those connections and helps reinforce the learning. And also they're not looking at large slabs of text, I think, as well. So breaking it up with images and white space as well definitely helps the readability as well.
So the nice thing generally about a picture, if it's a fairly generic kind of picture, is doesn't matter what language you speak, pictures can be universal. Whereas words can be very, very regional. You know, a word even within a country that speaks the same language can mean different things when you move to different parts of that country. So having those visuals can, at least there's a connection that everybody can have with that particular resource. But so Lottie, you did talk about relevance. So, but who was talking about relevance as well? The person that came up first said relevant to an interest area or relevant to the learners.
Yeah, I put that one. I did that one, Alison. Relevant to the area of interest. I find that if all of my students are in agriculture, or trying to get into agriculture. So if you talk about agriculture, they seem to be a little bit more engaged from the start because they've got that interest, and sometimes they've got a little bit of knowledge in the area. So you start with that as well, and you can build on that.
So fantastic. So you're looking at perhaps any experience they may have is really good. They can contextualize it on their previous experience. But yeah, the key to learning is even before the learning content or the learning resource. So we've got the process. We want people to learn. We give them learning content. But first of all, we have to get them to engage in the learning content before they can learn. So that's a really important part of kind of getting to I always think about getting into their head and seeing the world from their eyes. What is it that they're seeing and thinking that can connect them to the bit of learning that we're aiming to help them achieve? Excellent. All right. So we've got some good points already about what we're doing around choosing the right employability or employment skill resource. So just want to move on. We've got a few resources we want to check towards the end. All right. So we talked about visuals before, graphics. So what kind of graphics are you using? So please feel free again to use the annotate or the chat, whatever works for you. What kind of resources are you using, or what are you using them for? What are you using graphics for? So we can think of images, we think of symbols, photos, tables, diagrams, infographics. What are you using them for? How do you actually use that graphic to complement the learning resource, or when you're looking for a learning resource? That connection again, isn't it? How does it connect to the learner at knowing their background? Beautiful. Does anybody use their own photos? I've got the photos here. Is anybody clever enough or have a bank of photos they're willing to share there? So we've got current job market graphics. Where are you accessing those from, the current job market graphics? Who's that one there? Might be able to find us. Anybody want to share where they're getting those graphs, not graphics, graphs?
Yes, basically I use the current job markets, particularly from to explain the demographics or to explain the needs of that particular skill in the market. So particularly I'm teaching aged care course at the moment, and I always show them what sort of requirements are, and the graphs are easier to speak than words.
That's right. The picture tells us thousands. I never know the saying. Maybe you can help me, Shruti. Picture tells us, anyway, I think we know what it is. Michael, can you help me with that? I can never remember, get them all out in my head at the same time. A picture tells us 1,000 words. Is that what it is? Shruti, what is it?
Something like that. Yeah.
Picture tells 1,000 words, or can
is
tell
that-
1,000 words.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Something-
said it.
So, okay, fantastic. So you're tapping into your industry
Yeah.
or job market statistics and resources and making use of those. So that's a fantastic idea there. I'd just love to talk to this one, signposting. What does signposting look like?
I put that in there. Just using things like icons, because in that the whole experience of putting together the Skills for Work and Study courses, you probably started off, arranging your activities or organising your activities, but the adding the icons kind of helps you to, particularly with online delivery, just helps them to navigate the text a lot lot more easily, and they don't tend to need you to that thing about turn to page 22 or whatever. Or if you're using they don't need as many prompts if you're using PowerPoint.
Nice. So they're really great for filtering, aren't they? So
yeah, absolutely.
And we're getting better with that, especially with all the technology that goes on there. Excellent. All right. So thank you. So there's some great ways. And as I said, what I'll do is I take a copy of each of these slides and I'll overlay them onto our slides, and you'll have a copy of all of these. So fantastic, some ideas there. Just going to quickly show you this slide, and you can remember on your annotate, you might have seen we've got some love hearts in that happening. So please feel free, if you are using visuals or graphics for any of these reasons, give us a tick or a heart or a star. And so we've got a bit of a poll going just using some of the emojis. So I'll let you just read through how we could be using graphics. We've got some really good ideas for graphics on the previous slide there. And visuals allow us to actually connect things much easier, because even if there's lots in them, we associate with them, remembering that writing is actually a codified system that can be hard to unpack, whereas a visual is something that we see all of the time. It's more natural to us. So how do we do that how do we use them to make sure we enhance any writing that we may have? All right, 3 more seconds if you're going to do any more emojis. 2, 1, done. I'm going to get rid of them. I've captured them, so I'll put them on the slide. So Michael, can I hand it across to you?
Yes, let's carry on with this and start to think now about how you ensure that your resources are user friendly. So what do you look for to that helps you say, well, that's perfect for my objectives, for my learners, where the program is going to go. So all the things that you think when you're evaluating resource to help you ensure that your resource is user-friendly and accessible. So you can use the annotation. Again, take the text and drop in on the board there what those things that you have. Okay, beauty. There we go. Now, I'm not sure who that was. I'm running out of prizes here, but I have got my sister-in-law's organic and aromatherapy made from quality ingredients. There's no dodginess there, no bananas in there, anything like that. It's all good stuff. So I'll somehow work to get that down the microphone for you. Well, we're getting some good tips here. Using icons. We're really trying to draw the learner's attention towards a particular thing, a checklist. Oh, that's interesting. the checklist person. Do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, that was when we did that checklist last classes. Remember in the introduction?
Yeah.
I think that's been great. I've spread that around my trainers and
okay.
giving them, so that they can do a checklist on things that I've developed and see if it's any good.
Well, now we're talking.
Yeah.
You got the inside. You got the inside running, and we're gonna build on that checklist too.
Yeah,
You've got
that's
lots
good.
of great things. Good on you. Oh, the Hemingway app. Now, the readability is an interesting thing, isn't it? I've been drawn to a couple of apps for readability, but what are you looking for there? And tell us a bit about the Hemingway app.
Yeah, it tells you whether your sentences are hard to read. It tells you the grade level. I actually put one of my sons, he's in year 10, one of his articles that he was given to read, and it was grade 14 level. So I normally sort of try and go between, sort of grade 7 or 8 for readability. So I have actually had to contextualize some resources by making it more readable, because sometimes they are quite tricky to read. So it looks for readability, and it tells you which sentences are harder to read, so you can actually go and replace those sentences and change words, and also splitting up the sentences. If it's a long sentence, it doesn't like it, so you can split sentences up into 2 or 3 sections to make it more readable.
Yeah, it's my handlers for my content writing for digital vet programs always tell me I've got to get under grade 8, and I've got to have passive sentences down to about 3%.
Yes,
so, yeah, it can be really handy for that kind of thing. It really helps you writing, doesn't it? I think the more you use these kind of tools, the more it pulls you up and shows you where you can improve yourself, in many ways.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, now we've got white spaces. I guess a bit of white space between my ears today, but can we talk a bit more about that, whoever that was?
Yes, I usually prefer to have white spaces and little bit of writing. Sometimes I use just the text boxes and put the writing randomly on the page, and we brainstorming a lot in the class. So yeah, and accessibility check is one of my favorite ones, because particularly I started doing that since I had a student with the visual impairment, and then I wanted to create the material accessible for her, and accessibility check in Microsoft Word all the Microsoft Office products gives me excellent features, whereby it tells me how much readable the document is.
Yeah, that is a good tool as well.
Good.
Absolutely.
Very good.
And yeah, so it's interesting when you think about, like, even the idea of websites over time, over history, a really good example of something that was really busy and now has got a lot of light in it, a lot of white space, and applying a lot of these principles that you're talking about, simple sentences, icons, short sentences, those kinds of things as well. Now, someone's mentioned there alt text for images and transcripts. Could we have a bit of an explanation of that, please?
Yes, so some people use screen readers when they're learning online, and the alt text actually reads out whatever you put in there. So if you've got an image of, 2 people having a conversation, you can actually write image of 2 people having a conversation. So for the people that maybe they do have visual impairments, then that can help them understand what's actually in the picture. So
great. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you. You've eliminated one slide that I've got. So thank you. I appreciate that. Now, using now one of the first movies I ever saw was Mary Poppins. My mother took me to it when I think I was 4. And as a result of that, I grabbed an umbrella and jumped off the roof, thinking that I would float gently to earth. And it was the first lesson that the media is essentially built on lies. But I'm interested to know more about fonts and why they're important. Whoever that was.
That was me. Yeah, just very simple fonts. I kind of like Poppins because It's the font that kind of is closest to my own style of writing. So
your handwriting.
my own style of handwriting, and yeah, I find that students, you know, particularly the lower level students, find it very easy to read.
Okay, so if I was to go into a bank today and present a check in your name with a Poppins font, would I get it cashed?
Maybe not.
Okay, it's worth asking. All right, great. That's a really fantastic list, and we're going to bring that into that little checklist that Jen talked about. But
yeah, can I just add to the font thing? Font thing is absolutely great. You hear a lot about this dyslexic font. My son is dyslexic and he doesn't like that font. He finds it hard to read. So just to let you know, if you have any dyslexic learners and you're using the dyslexic font, things like Poppins are very much easier to read. So it depends on your students, but get feedback on that if you're using it.
Yeah, I'll support that. The sans serif fonts are much easier for them, and a bit of colour at the background would be good, like a light blue or a light lemony colour.
Yeah, okay.
Mick and Alison, can you just clarify for everyone here, including myself, what is the general font that is used so that the standard so that is used? I believe it's Arial and Calibri. Is it standard use of the fonts that is generally is accessible and readable towards the majority of the population?
This seems to be the way it's kind of headed in the last couple of years, for sure. And I think, originally we started with Times New Roman was kind of the default on most things, and it's moved to more legible fonts, clearer fonts. Although there is a little bit of evidence that suggests that, having some serifs on fonts do help people's readability, but then there's others, it's just the plainer is more interesting. It seems as though we've evolved to a default. I remember even a lot of people used to use common scanners, even going back sort of 10 years ago. And if you look at how organizations attempt to differentiate themselves from others by their selections of fonts, they usually choose some derivation of Arial or Calibri to kind of just give themselves that point of difference, but they share similar kind of characteristics. I don't think it's a kind of standard as such. I think it comes down to what the institution decides and what sort of defaults they come with, because if you and also like transferability between organizations. If everybody use templates, it's often really hard to swap between a really different font and another font. And so I think some of those considerations come into play, Bruce. All right, brilliant. That's a pretty top list. What we're going to kind of do now is we're going to do a really quick run through of some instructional design principles, which you've given me and us mostly here as well. So we've got about 5. And you can see Lottie, there's yours right at the very bottom there. And the white space is one as well. So I'll just quickly go through these. So yep, ready, Miss Music. So colour. So warm colours are really legible and provide a bit of contrast. And yesterday we had people talking about they would never really write with a red pen or red marker or red font with their learners. And when we asked them about that, they said it kind of had some negative connotation around prior educational history. The student might have seen a lot of red on their work, and it was their kind of thinking. Although, you can play with these a little bit too, depending on seasons and things like that. But the reds, your oranges and yellows are your warm colours and give you that nice fuzzy glow. Nettie, Miss Music. Then the hierarchy of information, a few people have talked about this. So it's not really about a design, but it's about how you signpost the important information from another. So if you think about a newspaper article, we've got a headline, and then you might have a byline. You might even sometimes have a subheading, which gives you a little bit more information. And then you've got the body of the information. You might have a chart in there, and you might even have an image. So it's really how you lead people through your resource, from heading to instruction, to more information, those kinds of things. So those things that are the most important, we suggest be the most prominent. So your call to actions would probably be the really important thing. And you can do that a number of ways, as some of you described. Miss Music. Thank you. So using contrast. So some of us use bullets, but if you want to use icons and shapes and things, you can also use these for backgrounds or to form as a divider between information so that you show contrast in style. If you use a shape, it's always good to repeat that exact same size, but maybe change the color or change the shape of that particular thing. And you might also use some contrast in how you lay things out, kind of linear way or in a kind of random way. And a random way is probably better to sort of more discovery learning to help students take their time to get to know a resource and find information. A little bit like Alison's exercise at the start of our session, where we looked at 2 different images of her room on a Friday night and tried to work out what are the differences between those. Thanks, Ms. Music. And then Lottie described alt tags on images. I won't explain those again, but they're quite simple to do in Word. You drop an image in, number 1, you select your picture format, which gives you some picture editing tools. You can see it in the ribbon there. And one of those tools, number 2, is the alt text information. When you click that, it'll pop up a little window on the right-hand side, and then you can enter the text that you want to add. Now, the beauty of this in Word is that not only does it work with a screen reader, but it'll also put an overlay on the image so everybody can see the alt text as well. So it's always good to be really descriptive with this image, particularly to mirror as much as you can the intent of why you put that picture there, what was the purpose. And if you use something like a chart, it becomes a bit more difficult. I know a few use charts and graphs and those sort of things. What you would describe there is probably the tendencies that the chart and the graph is attempting to show. You would cut to the chase of what it shows rather than, you can't really allow students to work it out because they can't actually visualize it. So they're really useful. They've been a big part of the accessibility standards, along with transcripts for videos and audio. And if you're using video on podcasts, you'd be probably well aware. And also things like tables, use of tables and things. So probably more of a drama if you're putting information and stuff online, and many resources that we now use to build learning content online have those accessibility features built in, but you still have to do an alt tag manually for those things. Thanks, Miss Music. So Jen was talking about a checklist, and so yeah, that's very true. That Matthews, and so this is a little checklist we got from Learn Local and a few other little places. This is the criteria for instructional design, and you can see that we're going to add to this because you've given us quite a few more things that we can flesh out some of these things. But there's essentially kind of 7, 8 different things. I think I can't quite see them all, but it's all good. So, you come up with real world, visually appealing, the balance between white spaces and text and visuals. So that hierarchy of information is a good benchmark. Information is clear and easy to understand. So that things like headings and font styles, tables, boxes, focus the attention on key information. They're not kind of superfluous to it. They're just cutting really minimally. As anybody who's done the course around in the TAE around digital literacy, working with literacy and numeracy assessments in VET, knows that one of the assessment tasks there is to take a set of instructions to a learner and really strip it down to really simple text. And it's a real challenge to kind of be able to do that. We'll talk more about attributing original sources of information and images that you find from various sources, and the importance of recognizing and understanding what resources you can and can't use, depending on where you grab them. And we'll also talk about appropriate filing conventions later on too as well. But you've got lots of others we're going to be able to add to this list. And now what we're going to do is a bit of a quick, rapid challenge in the time we've got left. And we're going to run through, we're going to spend about 2 minutes on each of these. You're going to think, okay, we've had a discussion, we've seen the checklist, and what we're going to do is, I reckon what we might do is get you to use the stamp tool here and either give us a tick or a cross if you think it does meet that criteria and all the criteria you come up with. Is it good, or it doesn't quite meet? It doesn't really meet the criteria that you think. So let's see how we go. Let's see how the voting goes. It's all anonymous, so you can vote however you particularly want, and you can put your tick and cross wherever you want. So up to the annotations, collect stamp, and you'll see a tick and a cross. And you can tick on these resources. There's 2 there, house plan, and then there's a numeracy activity around directions. And then we'll ask you to say, yay, I think it meets those criteria we've come up for good resources, or cross, no, it doesn't.
I'll just give it a context. Remember, what we've had to do is take a big page and put it on a small page. So if you're thinking that the writing's too small, to give that in that context, that this would have been on an A4 piece of paper, and then when we've squeezed it down into a PowerPoint slide.
Now, if you do a tick or a cross, just follow it up really quickly with a message in the chat saying why you don't think it's the case. Well, it is the case. You think it beats or it doesn't meet. Put your stamp on, and then in the chat, quick sentence about why you don't think it doesn't or does. How are we going with those stamps? Do you find them okay? Go up to the annotations. You've been using the text one, but a little bit to the right of that is a series of stamps. And you can put love hearts up, you can put stars, and you'll see a tick and a cross there. In fact, you did it a minute ago, didn't you? Yeah. All right, we've got a tick on one. Thank you. I haven't got any prizes left. Oh, this 1970s calculator could be coming your way. Still working. It's solar, one of the first solar. Actually made in the USA. So thinking about the criteria we've developed together. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Great. Everyone loves a house plan, don't they? Yeah, that's a good point about 1.21. All right, so we're given the we're saying number 1, yay, number 2, no. So the people have spoken. Thank you for that. Let's have a go at another one. That was teamwork skills. Go to Bruce. And now let's look at communication skills. So here's a resource. Think about the design principles we've come up with. And you might even be able to find some ways to perhaps potentially improve this. So give you a stamp, and then maybe you can provide a suggestion as to how this might be improved in some way according to the criteria. It's hard not to tick an image of food, isn't it? Let's face it. I bet you that was Sylvia. And it is a good image. Looks bloody fantastic. I remember Collingwood Neighbourhood House used to work with a woman, Turkish woman, and she used to spend all Fridays, they worked for a catering group, all Fridays making hummus. I never tasted any hummus like it. It's just an eggplant dip. Well, we're getting a couple of crosses. How might we improve this? We're liking the icon too. Yes, that is not, we're not sure about that list. It may well be something contextual to the rest of the resource, which we haven't included, but I'm not saying that's the case. It could be an option. I think this might make a good comic, just the interactions between the three characters. I thought it might be quite interesting to see that. Wow, it's a shame it's an image. Otherwise, we could probably send it down to the boys and girls at Forensic to give us a detailed swab of that hummus and just tell us exactly what it is. I think that's a really good point. That would be a really good exercise. Students could swab the hummus. I like the language, I think. All right, let's move on. Let's go to Alison's got one for us now.
So yeah, the problem solving skills. So again, that picture of the hummus, remember, would have been sitting nicely on a page, and then I've come and squeezed it down. So keep some of the dimensions and stuff in line. So this one's about problem solving skills. And again, based on the criteria, do you think it meets some or most of the criteria? Remember, we haven't got some of the things at the bottom about naming conventions and so on, but I'll be quiet and see how we go there. So I think there's a combination there. Sorry, I was just reading through what some of the things at the bottom there. So yeah, maybe there's maybe a little bit too much text. So again, we have to know the background of the learner group. So if the learner group had low language literacy, then we would need to maybe contextualize. This is where we take the resource, review the resource. This is what we're doing. Select a resource, review a resource, and then contextualize it for the area for which we want to use it for. So if our learners were called learners or had language and literacy considerations, then we might adjust some of the initial instructions. But certainly, yeah, I think that it's the actual activity is good. All right, so any more adding, ticking and flicking? I think we'll probably jump to what do you need to do between the next workshop, but you can have a look at the next couple of resources in your own time when we upload the resources. So all right, so 3, 2, 1, I'll save them, thank you for that. So I'll give you a quick look at them, but you can come back and have a look when in the Emodo. All right, so these were for job searching. So I'll give you a little look there. And this one was for return to study and work. So if you want to practice that, how do I use that checklist? So remember, we're using the checklist, and as Michael says, over the time we want to build on that. These are the ones we try to keep quite simple. In terms of when we are changing or using any resources, we do need to be careful of copyright, making sure that if we take resources, we take them from sources that have been licensed to allow us to use them in a certain way. So Creative Commons search is fantastic. Pixabay and Unsplash are really good for images, and you may find other, often government resources allow you to use, they use the Creative Commons licensing to tell you how you can use their information, similar to when you were talking about using graphs from your industry, making sure you've got permission to use them in the way you'd like to move them. So we've got, what we'd like you to do then is, today we've looked at a range of the different principles to what makes a good learning resource design. So what makes a good employment or employability skill resource design, looking at the principles that we've shared with you today, the ones that you've given to us as a group. And so find a resource that you'd like to use with the learner group and tell us, how could you improve that resource based on the principles that we've been through today? Michael said earlier on when he was going through Edmodo where to submit it in Edmodo. So that's where we'd like you to submit the work. So find the resource. If you can share it as a file, then share it as a file. If you found it online, remember to share it as a link, and make sure you've got permission to make any changes to that particular resource. So before we wrap up, questions about what we want you to do between now and it's a fortnight between now and when we see you again to do this little activity. So find an employment or employability skill resource that would be useful for a group of learners, then share with us, based on the principles and on the criteria we've given you, how could it be improved? Gay, have you got a comment or a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Is it okay if we review a video or something like that and say how?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, yes. We're often very kind of not paper-based, but so think about that. If you are going to take a video and you're going to improve it, how are you going to improve it? Because videos, the one thing about videos is, one is you may not be allowed to change it. And two is, if you are allowed to change it, do you have the resources to change it? So it might be what you bolt onto it that will make it better.
Yeah.
Or find, you know, closed caption or something. Yeah. So absolutely. So, or a combination, Gay, of the video and so it's the instructions that you would do. So you've got the resource, you just need to make sure you've got the instructions or the learning activity to do with it.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Excellent. Any other questions? So we'll see you in a fortnight's time, and ideally in Edmodo as well. So very shortly we'll upload the resources from today if you want to go through them again, and you can review that activity instructions in there too. Excellent. All right. So
thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Been a